Yeah. So good afternoon, participants. So we are on the sixth session of our FDP. Hope you all had a nice lunch. So uh, uh, this session will addressed by Dr. K.S. Kuppusamy. I'll give a brief introduction about Sir. He's a assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science, School of Engineering and Technology, Pondicherry University. He's having around 13 years of teaching experience, and his research interests include accessible computing, human-computer interaction, and machine learning. He has published around 100 plus papers in indexed international journals and international conferences and technical magazines. His articles are published by reputed publishers such as Oxford University Press, Elsevier, Springer, Trailer, and Francis, World Scientific, Emerald, and EFY. He's the recipient of Best Teacher Award from Pondicherry University, that is 6 times. He's serving as the counselor for persons with disabilities at HEPSN Enabling Unit, Pondicherry University. So he'll be taking us through a hands-on on the sensor data analytics, specifically on Julia. I'm sure that he's the right person here with us today for this activity. So over to you, sir. Please.
So I just have one word, like Kuppusamy sir is a pretty technology enthusiast, and like I just want participant to make use of his knowledge, especially in Julia, which is going to be one of the next fast-growing language. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So sometime what happens is people give too much of introduction, and then the expectation suits up, and then they will be thinking, oh, something.
The data members and member functions असतात. तसंच publics मध्ये सुद्धा data member आणि member.
Shivam with so it is like parallel computing. I think 2 people are so they are doing something with the microphone mute. Anyhow, so this has become the new normal. Okay, so we will go on to our thing. Anyhow, I would like to thank the IIIT Kottayam administration and
Sir, can you please unmute, sir? Actually,
am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would like to thank the IIIT Kottayam and particularly the Department of Computer Science Engineering and Victor Paul for giving me this chance to interact with you all today afternoon. And I remember Victor here, he was doing his PhD. Well, so today we are going to talk about Julia programming language and data analytics with Julia and sensors and how we are going to go ahead with it. So I'm going to spend my 90 minutes with you so that there should be some take-home points. So at the end of this lecture, I don't even want to call it as a lecture. At the end of this interaction session, you will have something that you can take home and you can start applying in your projects that whatever you are doing and that you are doing, and so that it will be giving you a better idea on what are all the works, how you can better do the works that you are already performing. So let us start this session with a small task. So I don't know how many of you are actively listening. Let's check that. So I'm going to share my screen now. I think now my screen is visible to all of you, right? Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I have now done is that you are seeing something on your screen that here you can see. See, go to this site called menti.com. Go to this site where whatever laptop or mobile phones that you are using, go to this site called menti.com and type this code 79761419. And there you just enter the name of the programming languages that you know. I hope you are able to understand what I'm saying. Go to this site menti.com and type this code what you are seeing on the screen, 79761419. Just enter the names of the programming language that you know. I'm not telling the languages that you know, only the names. Even if you know the names, that's fine. Just enter the names. Yeah. So now, as you can see on my screen, as you are typing there, we are getting the replies on the screen. You got Python, Java, and we can see that one person has responded. Let's see how many people are actively listening. 4, 5, R, C. So it's building a word cloud as you are typing there. Kotlin, very nice. Java, VB. All of you kindly keep your microphone in mute mode so that it will not create a disturbance for other people. I have got responses from 9 people. So as many people have entered Python, Python is appearing bigger as you can see here because it is building a word cloud as you are typing the answers there. So I'll just wait for 1 more minute before I finish this thing. So what is the idea of this particular exercise is that we have got plenty of programming languages, isn't it? We have got, as you have typed, we have got Python, C, Java, Kotlin, VB, like that. Plenty of programming languages are there. And you might have seen in the browser that today we are going to talk about another new programming language, which is called Julia. And you might obviously get a question that why should I learn another programming language? Why not? It is better that I do it with the existing programming language itself. So at the end of this session, you will have answers to those questions and why you have to do this data analytics, particularly in Julia, and even for sensors also. What that Julia will be specially providing you, and why you have to go for Julia. That is what is the objective for this session is. So I have a presentation. I will just open the presentation, but we will shift between like the presentation and then a demonstration, and we also have. So overall, the session is organized like this. First, I will take you through an introduction to Julia. I will introduce you why Julia, what, how, where, all these things. That's a basic programming constructs. Then we will go on to Jupyter Notebook and then see like how Julia you can directly start working with the Julia. I think that's what we are going to see next. Then I will take you through Raspberry Pi and how you can install Julia on the Raspberry Pi, and how you can connect to different sensors such as using SenseHat, and what kind of things that you can do with the Julia on the Raspberry Pi kit also. I hope some of you might be already having some ideas on the Raspberry kit and Raspberry Pi kit. So this is what is the, and we will also talk about the data frames in Julia, so that how Julia is able to give you a better performance over the other programming languages. And in the end, we will also talk about like a small task like how do you do something that you capture through the Raspberry Pi. Say you are capturing an image, and how do you identify what is that image? Kind of how do you do machine learning in Julia, and like particularly vision thing, how you are going to do the vision analytics or identification, something like that. So this is what is the overall roadmap. So let's see how much we are able to cover in this with the limited amount of time. But the objective is not to tell you everything. What is the objective is? The objective is to tell you that there is a programming language called Julia, and it's a right programming language that you all need to explore at this point in time, particularly as of now. It has got a lot of traction and a lot of things are happening around Julia, and around 1,000 universities in the Western world, they have started teaching Julia in their curriculum. But of course, we in our country still need to pick up on the Julia, and I can clearly see that down the line, another 2-3 years, many institutions will be coming up with Julia in their curriculum. I was told that many of you are teachers, so it's right time that you being a computer science teacher, you should get accustomed with the new programming language, or what is the philosophy of the new programming languages. So let me just close this thing from here. And so far I got responses from 15 people. That's good. So what we will do now is I will just switch back to Julia again. I mean, I hope you were able to see my presentation, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's talk about this data analytics with the Julia. Well, so how many programming languages are there? I asked in one of my earlier classes, and some of the students said there will be around some 100 programming language, and somebody said there'll be few tens of programming language. Somebody said, oh, there may be some 300, 400 programming language. And you might be curious to know that how many programming languages are there overall. A simple search tells you that there are around 9,000 programming languages are there. If you compare everything, it goes into few thousands, such as 20, 25,000 programming languages are there. But some of the prominent languages that you take, those languages comes around 8,900 programming languages are there, and out of which 245 programming languages come under the notable list. What is meant by notable list is they have been used by general public or generally by programmers, etc., for doing their task. So even 245 is a very big number. So at this point, you might be having a question that why should I learn another programming language? What is the need that I should go for this new programming language? Now I'm going to narrate you a scenario, so please listen carefully. When we are doing our task with the programming languages, generally there are two things that are there. The first thing is that there are some programming languages which are very easy to learn, which are very easy to do the code, but in that programming language, the output that we create, the code that we build will not be very optimal. This is one set. Some of the programming languages which are very easy to learn, in which you can easily build the code, but the outcome of that code will not be very much optimum. Then on the other hand, you have some other set of programming languages in which that programming language will be difficult to master. The code will take a lot of time to write, but once you build the code will run very much effectively. Say, if I say like this, you will be able to understand. If you take a programming language such as C, the code that you are building in C programming language will be obviously, it will be an optimal code. But any considerable sized project that you want to build in C programming, it is going to take a lot of time. But the outcome that you are creating is optimal. On the other hand, if you take a programming language such as Python or R programming language, on the other hand, you can build very quickly. These are called mostly you can build prototypes very quickly. But when you want to go for real time, their optimal performance, whether we are able to achieve the optimal performance, is always a question mark. So Python is very easy, C is very fast. So what if there is a programming language which may get the benefits of both these environments? And that is the thought on which the founders of the Julia programming language came up with an idea that why can't we create a programming language that is as easy as Python programming language and as powerful as the C programming language. And the result is the Julia programming language. There is a colloquial saying in the Julia world that Julia is a programming language which walks like Python and runs like C. So it's like it walks like Python and runs like C. That means that it is very easy to build as such in Python, and it's very what I will say, the code that you build will be very, very optimal. Maybe some of you might be very critical that how can there be a programming language which will be both easy as well as it will be producing optimal code. It sounds like a marketing ploy. No, it's not, because this programming language is not come as a marketing language or anything like that, because this is an open source. It's a free and open source programming language, and the code is widely available in the for you to go through, and there are plenty of case studies are there in the Julia website, and you can go there and see that what all the different things that have been done with the help of the Julia creators. Even they go to a next level, and then they say that they wanted to create a programming language which is open source, of course, as I said, and they wanted to create a programming language at the speed of C, and they wanted to include the dynamism of Ruby, and they want to have something like in MATLAB, in which you can easily enter the mathematical notations, as generic as Python, as easy for statistics as R. So they wanted to build the power of everything together and distill that into one programming language, and that is what they wanted to create Julia. And Julia is the answer for that programming language. And if some of you are into technical computing, Julia is going to simply rock the technical computing in the years to come. So it has got plenty of features that makes this particular programming language a very interesting choice. So this is what is the basic conundrum that I was explaining you now. So there is obviously there is a thing between the execution speed and the development ease with which the programming language can work with. So we want the best of both worlds. We want the best of the C programming world as well as the best of the Python world also. So that is where Julia actually fits in. And this is an article that I wrote in Open Source for You magazine way back in 2016, where we I explained about how a programming language, Julia in fact came in 2012, I guess, and then it has started becoming very popular. But after this machine learning wave started picking up, now recently, if you see, there is a lot of traction into the Julia environment. I think the initial version came in 2012, and as of now, Julia is 1.6.2, which is the latest version of the Julia programming language. And these are the people who are the brain behind the Julia programming language. See, where you might be thinking why I'm showing the developers picture and all. We in computer science field obviously has made our field look very much mechanical. We never give the credit to the people who work behind that. So in my classes, I used to always emphasize that there is a human face to computer science, like people who have done what. So that we have to always emphasize. So here you can see, you can notice somebody who's looked like an Indian. So you can see here is Viral Shah, who is an Indian actually. So he's the he was also the 4-member team which developed the Julia programming language, and they have been awarded this Wilkinson Prize for developing this particular programming language. And Professor Edelman, there are a lot of talks by Edelman available in the YouTube. You can go through it, and where he talks about the basic philosophy behind the Julia programming language. So what is the moral of the story that I'm trying to tell you is that you can certainly give a try on the Julia programming language. Okay, I think this intro is enough for the Julia programming language. So let us just narrate simply so that it registers in your mind. Let me just build a mind map. Just a minute. So let's just summarize whatever I told you so far. So Julia, the reasons for selecting Julia, the top 10 reasons for selecting Julia is that first I will say it is free and open source. So it works at excellent speed. I think you are able to see the mind map, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So primarily it solves the two language conundrum. Two language conundrum means two language problem, what I was talking about. And it's very much suitable for technical computing. Then you have this parallel processing support. Got this parallel processing support. So there is something in Julia which is very good that I will say is that Julia is completely written in Julia itself. So I will say that it's LLVM based low-level virtual machine. I'll just talk about low-level virtual machines a little bit later. So that's also another interesting feature on the Julia programming language. So there is another interesting thing that that is on Julia programming language, that interlanguage calls. What I mean by interlanguage calls is that from Julia, you can call a Python code. We will see an example. Before you get it wrong, I want to make it correct that I'm not pitching Julia against Python. So it is, we should not get like that. I'm not telling you that you should forget everything that you learned in Python and then shift back to Julia. I'm not saying that. Julia is a new entrant into the, is a recent entrant into the data science domain or analytics domain particularly. It can coexist with other programming languages such as Python or any other programming language that you wanted to go with. So it is not that we are pitching the Julia against the Python programming language. Julia is going to be there. Python will also be there. So it is going to coexist. So both this programming language will be coexist so that whatever works very well with the Julia, we will work with the Julia, and then whatever works well with the Python, that we will take up with the Python this thing. So so this pretty much gives you an idea on what are the features that you can expect into Julia. So suppose now you have decided that you want to work with the Julia. So what is the first step? How do you get started with the Julia programming language? So let's just move on this. So you can go to Julia website. julialong.org, and you can see here. So you can see here, download the Julia directly. So the recent version now it has become 1.6.3. Last month during I think August, September, I checked, it was 1.6.3. Now it has become 1.6.4. Doesn't matter. So you can see here Julia supports all the major platforms. You can install in Windows, Mac OS, Linux environments, and then FreeBSD, or even you can compile it from the so we can also add this fact also to our mind map. So we can say here support for major platforms. I mean here OS, operating systems. Here the idea is that for our today's session, particularly that you might be interested, Julia can be made to run on the Raspberry Pi also. So Raspberry Pi, you know that Raspberry Pi is a small credit card size computer. We will come to Raspberry Pi a little bit later. So you can see these are the operating systems in which you can install. Installation is so straightforward. What you have to do is just select this portable installer and then click on the installer file and download and run the installer. More often than not, there will not be any problem. So you can just install Julia in your computer. Okay, now you have installed Julia in your computer. How do you start working with the Julia? You can start working with the Julia in multiple ways. So let me just show you some of the ways in which you can work with the Julia. Suppose the first method is to come to the terminal. So from terminal, if you type Julia, now you can see here. Are you able to see my terminal?
Yes, sir.
So you can see here Julia has been shown here. Now here comes your Julia REPL, whatever that read, execute, print loop, read, evaluate, print loop. So here you can, this is like the Python prompt where you are entering your Python code. So here you can enter your Julia expressions and it will start working. So let me just show you something. So here, suppose if I type x is equal to 10. So here like this. So Julia is very much Mac friendly, I will say. So suppose, for example, if I do something like this. Okay, no problem. So we'll just exit this. So here what we are trying to do is we can directly enter the commands like this, and you can work from here also. But most of the time, we will not be working. Here like this. So let us just show you that thing. So what I was about to show you to you was that whenever we so in this case it might be it might not be always suitable that you want to enter you want to work in a Julia terminal like this. So as you are all aware of Python programming, and you will be working with a Jupyter notebook. So the Jupyter notebook itself is like this is Julia, Python, and R notebook. So there also you can enter your programs, and I have made one Julia notebook also. So you can add the Julia notebook to Python, and then you can start the notebook. So here, what I have done in my system is I have installed the Anaconda Navigator. Anaconda, and after you come to Anaconda, you can launch the Jupyter notebook, and the Jupyter notebook will launch here. So I have already made one Jupyter notebook. So let's start our first notebook. I think the notebook is visible, right? Is this screen visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Why do I check every time is that sometimes as a presenter we'll be going a long way, then somebody will be telling that it is not visible as we move from one screen to another screen. So you want to check the version information from Julia. So what you have to do is just go and enter this command, version information. So it is telling you that what is the version. Ma'am, anything special, ma'am? Anything specific, ma'am? Oh, I'm just in a session, ma'am. The IIT Kottayam. Okay. Okay. So here you can just enter the version info. You can get the version info session like this. Now I'm not going to take you the complete programming demonstration through the Julia, because most of the things will be very much similar to what you have done in other programming language. I will just show you where Julia excels. Say for example, here, suppose I want to create a variable, something like this. Say x1 is equal to 10. Now let's create another thing. You might be wondering that what is special with this. So now you can see here the output is 30, but my objective is not to show you the output as 30. But mathematically, sometimes what do we do is, suppose if we want this x1 to be like a subscript kind of a thing for you. So what you can do is, you can just go here, something like this.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
How did you go to Julia from Jupyter? Can I know that?
What's your question? Can you repeat?
Now, first we need to install Julia and then go to Jupyter. Automatically, it will be visible. How is it?
Yeah. Actually, what you have to do is, okay, that's a good question. So you have installed the Julia, right? So you can add this iJulia extension to the Julia notebook. So you can, I'll just show you how to add the packages. There is an extension called package. You can say using package, and then you can say package.add iJulia, so that iJulia interface will be added to this one, and then you can come to the Anaconda and open the notepad, and it will be started working there. I hope you got the answer, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's very simple only. Don't no need to worry about it. So what I'm trying to show here is, here you can see this variable what I created. Sometimes we write, see, many times what happens is, we as researchers, we write our research papers, and in our research paper we use a lot of mathematical notations. Those mathematical notations, when we want to write into program, they become two different versions of the same thing. But suppose I want to create the same thing what I wrote in a mathematical as mathematical notation in my research paper. Exactly, I want to use the same thing in my program. For example, if you are using in your machine learning program something like say eta is equal to 0.1. Now what I did is I just entered this LaTeX symbol eta. I don't know how many of you are comfortable with the LaTeX. How many of you are comfortable with the LaTeX? Can you just respond in the chat box? Have you heard about LaTeX? Okay, so some of them are answering. If you have heard about LaTeX, LaTeX is like a document editing tool from where what you can do is you can just enter and format your documents very nicely. Here you can see here many times we will be using this kind of mathematical symbols in our these things. So suppose, for example, if I wanted to do this, I wanted to multiply now this eta multiplied by x. So you can see here now. So you can see this expression looks more like what you see in your paper rather than creating a separate expressions like this. All the LaTeX symbols that whatever that you use it for your programs, etc., for your algorithms, etc., those things can be directly used in the Julia programming. Suppose if you are using pi, you can just see here. You can say pi, and then the pi value will be automatically printed here. So you can use the Greek letters, whatever that are there. Directly into the code also. If you have to understand this correctly, this is something called expressionism as a problem in reproducibility of the code. Many times researchers write their code, researchers write their papers, and then they create the code. But as a reader, when you are reading the paper and you see the algorithm, when you want to see the code and the algorithm that they have written, both the things looks pretty much different. But when you code that in a programming language such as Julia, it is very simple that whatever the symbols that you used in your programming, the mathematical expression, the same thing that you can use it here also in the program also. So whatever you use in the algorithm, the same thing that you can use it in the program as well. Well, so this is what that you can check it out here. Whenever you wanted to get help about anything, just you have to type the question mark and then whatever symbol that whatever the command that you wanted to know, just you can type this command to get the help about that. As I already told, I'm not going to take you through the complete programming language demo. So where, suppose for example, if you want to read something, you can just read something like this. So this will be like stored into this variable. So for printing, we have seen, for reading the input that we have seen. Now, next thing is, as I said, Julia is very, very fast. So that how do you come to know that you can run this command, the peak flops. So the peak flops will tell you that I think you might be knowing that the flop stands for floating point operations per second. Peak flops means how much of floating point operations per second that you can crunch in Julia. In this particular machine, you can see this is 6.40065 into e to the power 10. That means that the number of floating point operations that the Julia can crunch is far higher than the floating point operations that the other things that they will be able to crunch. These floating point operations play a very important role in data analytics, particularly because many times what happens is automatically this roundabout error that happens when you automatically convert the floating point and truncate that into smaller digits. Then you know that famous rocket accident what happened by NASA, that where it automatically converted long floating point expressions into a smaller number, so it just crashed. So even you can see here the number of floating point operations that the Julia takes up is very, very high. So here are some of the ways in which you can build the arrays and other things, etc. You can see here, you can do this kind of assignments also. That is, here we are having 3 variables. And for the first variable, I want to assign 10. For the next variable, I want to assign this value 1 to 10. And the third variable, I want to assign this hello world. That is, first one is the scalar, the next one is a vector, and third one is a string. So you can do all these things into a chained assignments or parallel assignments like this in the same line itself. And of course, there are this element-wise operators are also there. What I mean by element-wise operator is, suppose if you have an array like this and you want to perform an operation such as addition or multiplication to each of the operations, what we call in dot operations, which is very much used in machine learning and other fields, that you wanted to do some dot multiplication or dot addition to all the operators that are there, all the elements that are there in the array. You can do this something like this. So this is possible in Julia. You can also do the chaining also. So how do you define a simple function is that you can write a function like this. And why I'm rushing through this, I wanted to show you Julia on the Raspberry Pi. If you find something you wanted to ask me, you can stop me at any time and you can ask me. So here you can see, we can define a function like this function. We are creating a function and then we are giving an argument to the function. And this function, what you build is something called a generic function. What I mean by this generic function is that here we did not specify any of the data types. Suppose if I give here 9, it is going to be 10. It is not 10.0, you can notice here. Suppose if I give here 9.5. So it is a generic function. Whatever that the data type of the value that we are going to give here, automatically this value will be taken up over here, and it will be taking it through from here. You can also do this LaTeX symbols in code. This is what I was explaining you some time back. See here, you can see when I wanted to use in an expression, I want to use this thing pi. I don't want to create a variable separately as pi. I can directly use this variable, this pi itself. How do I type this is as a LaTeX symbol. Just I have to type this backslash, then pi, put a tab, it will be coming here. Similarly, if you want to type alpha, tab here. Suppose you are adding everything and then you want to store into a variable, what might be a better variable than just putting a sigma here. So you can now store the values into this directly. So you can write expressions like this. This is why it is very much suitable for the technical computing. You may say that what is there in this Greek letters, you can replace them in the with the English letters also. But algorithms and our mathematical equations are still written in this form only. So what you see in an algorithm of a paper, you can directly transport into a Julia code. That is what I'm trying to repeatedly tell you so that you understand that thing. So okay, you can. Here now let's see the power of Julia with the scalability of Julia with a small function. You can see here I am defining a function. So what does this function do is it takes an array as input, and then we are going through the array and we are summing up all the elements. Okay, nothing great in this. So we are just summing up all the elements. Here we have made an array, test array, A array, 50, 60, 70. Suppose if I call this with the test of A, now it is summing up all the elements. For 3 elements, it worked very quickly. I mean, obviously it is going to work very quickly. Suppose if I generate 1000 random numbers, now how do I generate 1000 random numbers is, just call this random of 10 to the power 3. It is building 1000 random numbers. Now I call this test function with this 1000 random numbers. Now you saw that there was no delay actually. 10 to the power 3 is okay, 1000. What happens for 10 to the power 7? You saw that there is no delay. This is 10 to the power 7 random numbers got created. For each of these 10 to the power 7 random numbers, this function got called. I mean, with all these 10 to the power 7 random numbers, this function got called and they got summed up, and the result is available to you here all these things done in 0.04 seconds. 0.04 seconds. You can see here, this is 10 to the power 7 elements. You can try the same thing with Python and see that how much time it takes over there. Let's make it to 10 to the power 8. 10 to the power 7 and 10 to the power 8 is not only changing from 7 to 8. This is there will be a huge difference between 10 to the power 7 and 10 to the power 8. Most of the programming languages, it will hang when you try to create 10 to the power 8 random numbers and try to call a function. You know that every function call needs something that you have to push something into a stack and then pop it again and bring it back. And whichever function that you want to time, you can just call that with at time. So it will show you that at time you can call this function with the 10 to the power 8 random numbers. So it has found out the sum. At the same time, it has created this thing here. You can see 0.51 seconds. It has created in it has found out the sum of these numbers in 0.5 seconds. So whenever you are doing machine learning or analytics, particularly, most of them. Just a minute. Most of them are like the matrices and the long list of vector and long multidimensional tensor, etc. So primarily the power of analytics lies in how scalable a programming language is, and that is where a programming language such as Julia plays a major role, because how it worked for 1000 numbers with similar speeds, it was able to compute for 10 to the power 7 numbers and 10 to the power 8 numbers also. Of course, there'll be slight, when you try to run a Julia program for the first time in your system, it will take a slight amount of time, because what Julia does is, what's the difference between Python and Julia, by the way? Python is an interpreter based programming language. That means that every time you run the program will be interpreted. So line by line, the program is going to be interpreted and the program is going to be executed. What happens in Julia is that Julia goes to with an approach called LLVM, which is called low level virtual machine. When you are executing the program for the first time, it converts into a format which is rather easier to execute in the later runs. So first run, it is going to take a slight amount of time, because that doesn't matter to us, because the first run we are going to run it on our side, so that it's not going to create that much amount of a problem for the end users. So, but when it is given to the end user, obviously it is going to run very, very quickly. So you can see that Julia supports things such as recursion, etc. You can check here. Here we have created a generic function with this function, and this is the general function to create the Fibonacci sequences, etc. So here you've got this matrix operation. The way, how do we create matrix in Julia is that whatever the row-wise elements are there, that you will type with space separation. Then we will be putting a semicolon, and then the next row will be entered here, and then you will be having this thing here. Like the next and next row will be obviously here. So you will be entering this the character the rows one by one here. So we have this matrix that has been built here. So we can fill the matrices with whatever values that you want, etc. Say matrices can also be treated like the normal elements. The scalar, how did you treat it? You created two matrices here, and these two matrices can be added as if like we are adding a normal number. You can see here, first matrix that we got created here, we created here. Second matrix we created here, and the third matrix, whatever that we are building, it can be simply added like this without. And you see here, so far I have not imported any of the packages or anything like that. You can do in Python also the linear algebra and other stuffs, but for that you need to go for another separate packages such as NumPy or some other packages, etc. But so far here I did not come for other. Julia also has the package ecosystem where you can add this thing, but the mathematical crunching mostly happens directly here. You can see here multiplication also happens very quickly, and transpose, inverse, eigenvalue, and all these things that you will be able to find out here. So you can check here. Here what I have tried to do is I have created a 10,000 by 1,000 matrix and tried to multiply that 1,000 by 1,000 matrix and try to show the output, and it got created in a faster way. So there are a lot of operations that you can do with the matrices. The Julia documentation will be able to tell you effectively. So as I said in the beginning, we can build the type neutral operations in Julia. Type neutral operation means with any value that you give us input, the corresponding thing will be automatically taken here. The data type will be automatically taken here. See here, I build a function f of x is equal to 4x cube plus 3x square plus 8. So then we can call with any number. Say you want to call with the 5, this function works. You want to call with the float point also, this function works. Okay, then I was telling you about packages. So here you can see here we have got this package thing that we are adding here. So then what are all the packages that are installed in this machine? I wanted to check up. Then we can say package.status. Like what do we do in pip freeze in Python? You can just say pip freeze in Python so that it will be showing you all the packages that are installed over there. So here you will be able to check what are the packages that are there in the Julia. As I was telling you, from Julia you can call Python. So this is one of the interesting stuff. Suppose you have some code in Python which you don't want to change, but you still want to use Julia. What you can do is, there is a Julia library called PyCall. So you can add this PyCall library here. So to add any library, these two steps that you have to follow. The first step is that you have to import this package, and then you have to say package.add PyCall. So this PyCall package is added. So already it is added, so we don't want to add it again. So just you have to run import package and then package.add. The name of the package, whatever you wanted to add, just you have to give here. So since I'm running it again, it is checking the registry, etc., whether it is already available or not. Now it will say updating, maybe it is updating to a recent version or something. You might be knowing that whenever you see a star here in the Jupyter notebook, that means that the execution is still on. So it is checking the package versions, so resolving the package versions. So once the versions are resolved, that package will be added out over here. Just wait for yeah. So it has got here. So then what you can do is you can now using PyCall, you can say PyImport math. So this math is now imported from Python. Whatever that math.sine, math.py, all these things are now imported from the Python, so that this import can happen, and you can call the Python code also. You can write your code and you can call that Python code also here. This is called Julia calling Python. Right. So here you also, whenever you do any analytics project, primarily there will be visualization. Visualization is like how we do the how we do this data in a kind of charts or in various different pictorial representations, how we understand the patterns in the data through graphical representation. That is what we call it as the visualization, isn't it? For doing the visualization, Julia comes up with lots of packages. You've got plots package, which is to plot your data like this. Suppose you have got some data that you are sensing, and the data you wanted to plot like this line plot. So you can simply say plot. So first you are adding this plot. First time you have to say package import package.add plots, but we already done this here. So you wanted to use any of the packages, just say using plots. So this package can be added here. So this is the line plot that we have added here. You can also add attributes to this plot. So now you can check it out here. We can add the X title, Y title, labels, all these things you will be able to add it here. So you can add multiple lines also, and legends you will be able to add. You can create a scatter plots also very easily. Just you have to say scatter series type is equal to scatter, this constant that you have to say. Scatter plot is a very, very useful tool for say whenever you are doing some sort of a clustering or some sort of a classification. When you plot the feature one against another, you will be able to see that clustering so easily. And you can create multiple plots also like this. You might have seen in research papers, etc., when they are presenting the result, they just group lot of plots like this into one diagram. Now this is like one diagram that we have added over here. How we have done is, we have added, we have first created one plot, and then we have made one scatter plot, another plot that we have made it, and we have also made a histogram, and finally we have plotted everything together into a 2x2 form, that is 2 rows and 2 columns format. And legend I have switched off because otherwise it will be creating a lot of merk over here. So you can save this as a image, and then that image you can show it over in your research papers, etc. What is the difference between the normal visualization that we do in other programming language and Julia is that in Julia you can use something called Gadfly, GADFLY, which creates production quality outcome. That means what is production quality outcome is that when you create a plot, when you use it in your research paper, suppose if your paper get accepted, then they will be asking for something called a high quality image of that particular chart. If you have created your chart using Excel or something like that, and you have taken screenshot from that, many a times what happens is that you might not be having a high quality image with the resolution what they are looking for. But when you create a plot like this in Julia, it will be obviously creating a high quality plot. You can save that back to the SVG format itself, so that SVG scalable vector graphics, so that it will be very much easily it can be used. So here what we have done is we have taken this iris data set, and we have done this plot with the different kinds of symbols, so that this is just to show you that Julia has all these abilities. In Julia, you can also build the violin plots, box plots also you will be able to make. This is to analyze among a series of data where what is the first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, fourth quartile, whether they are matching across all these different kinds of data, that you will be able to check it out through this thing. So you can see here making all those things are simply one line of code only. Suppose you want to make a violin chart, just to say violin of whatever that y value that you are having, the series values, that you can just give it over here, and that you can that plot will be made. Similarly, you want to use the box plot, just call the box plot. What is this exclamation mark here is whenever you want to update something in that same place itself, then you will be using this exclamation mark. Suppose I have made a chart and I want to update, but I don't want to create a separate chart. I want to update in the same chart itself. So then you will be using this exclamation symbol that you will be checking out here. And as an analytics person or as a machine learning researcher or somebody who is working with data science, you would be familiar with something called correlation plot. See here in the iris data set, what I have taken is I have taken this 4 parameters, this sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, and I wanted to create what is the correlation among all these different kinds of variables. When we wanted to create the correlation plot of all these 4 features in one single function, you can just see here we have just called correlation plot of, we have just given whatever this thing, and this grid is the this df here indicates the data frames. So here it has created all these things, like here it has made petal width, petal length, sepal width, sepal length. Similarly, it has taken this thing also here. What is the correlation between these things? It has created and it has plotted as a diagram. I was just mentioning you can also made this production quality, publication quality plotting with the Julia that can be done with the Gadfly. So for that to do, what you have to do is you have to just take this Gadfly, and then with this Gadfly, you can select Gadfly and then create a graph, Gadfly.plot, and you can save this Gadfly.plot into the format whatever that you want. So these diagrams what you have built here, they will be of publication quality. Here you can see I have just made it like draw SVG of this diagram if you want to convert into a SVG format, and this diagram can be converted into a SVG format here. So now, so far what we have checked is, first we saw how to install Julia and how to get into the language. Then I explained you what are the advantages of Julia. Then we have seen now through what are all the some of the basic language features what you can do through with the help of Julia. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is that okay, now this particularly this session is on the sensor data. So I thought like why not we try to use this thing through a Raspberry Pi. So how many of you have an idea on Raspberry Pi? Can you just respond in the chat box?
So we already had a session regarding like coding Raspberry Pi, sir. Maybe yesterday. Sir.
Okay. So
Yeah,
what was there in that session?
Yeah, actually they were like communicating between two or more IoT devices kind of thing using Raspberry Pi.
Okay, fine. So let me just show you then what we can do in Raspberry Pi with the in Julia, that I will show you. But for people who have not seen that thing, I think you might be knowing that Raspberry Pi is a small credit card size computer, right? So it has got various different ports. But my objective is that to show you that did you talk about the GPIO also? In the last session, did you talk about the GPIO also?
Sir, GPS we're talking, but I'm not sure.
Not GPS, GPIO.
No, I guess no. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So then, anyhow, let us come here once again. So here you know that I think you are able to see this, right? What I'm showing here. Are you able to see through my web camera? I'm just showing you a Raspberry Pi. Visible, no? Yes. So here, as Victor is telling me that you already had a session on the Raspberry Pi. So let me just focus on what the thing that we are going to see today. So you can see Raspberry Pi is like all in one kind of device, isn't it? So you've got all these components, all these different things that are required for a computer. All these things are there in a single chip sized device. So what is very important for us here is that generally with the Raspberry Pi, people code using Python, isn't it? So you can code using Python in the Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi runs on the the Raspbian OS. So here what I can now show you is that let me just show you one thing. So what I have now done is I cannot just tan this thing. I have here configured a Raspberry Pi in my system, and I have tried to connect it through the VNC client now. Now you can see here, I think this screen is visible to you, right? Are you able to see the Raspberry Pi screen?
Yes, sir.
So now, what I have done here is that I have configured a Raspberry Pi and I have connected to my monitor, my computer, which is there next to me. And that computer now I connected using the VNC client. I think you may be knowing that VNC is a remote desktop client. So now this one is running here. So we can install the Julia in Raspberry Pi also. So here what I have done is I have already installed the Julia here. So I am opening a terminal, trying to run Julia here. You can check here. Now this Julia is running inside our Raspberry Pi. Now Julia by default doesn't come on the Raspberry Pi stack. You need to install Julia into the Raspberry Pi as an add-on onto the as an additional programming language that you can add on. And now you've got enough reasons why you should add the Julia to the Raspberry Pi kit here. So now, how do you install the Julia onto the Raspberry Pi kit is that? So let me open another presentation that I have so that so you know that there are a lot of models are there. Whatever model that I showed you now on in my hand that you are seeing here, this is the Raspberry Pi model 4, Raspberry Pi 4 with the 2 GB RAM. There are some differences in terms of sensors and other ports that are come here with this particular device. So in this device, you can see what we are mostly interested is is that, okay, how do you get Julia getting ready on the Raspberry Pi is, just you need to go to the terminal and then type sudo apt install Julia. So it is already there in the repository of the Julia, that is the software repository of Julia, not in your Raspberry Pi, it's on the cloud, so that you will install Julia into your device by going to the terminal and then typing sudo apt install Julia. So when you say sudo apt install Julia, Julia will be installed in your into your Raspberry Pi. So once Raspberry Pi this thing install into your this thing, then we have something called Pi GPIO. So what is this Pi GPIO is? GPIO stands for general purpose input and output. Here you can see in this board, here you can see some 40 pins that are there in this board, and these 40 pins that are that is what is called as the GPIO pins, the general purpose input and output pins. All other ports, whatever that you are seeing here, whether it is a USB port or you got an RJ45 port and you got this printer, this camera port, etc. All these things are for a specific purpose. But here, what you are seeing here, this GPIO, they are called the general purpose input and output pins, and these pins can be programmatically converted into either input mode or output mode. So what I say is, I'm telling you that these pins are generic pins, and these pins can be converted to either input mode or output mode. At one point in time, you can make signals to pass through it as output, and you can also sense it as input also. So how do you add this big PIO to your Raspberry Pi is, to your Julia, is that just you need to type this command inside your Julia terminal, add Pi GPIO, so that Pi GPIO module will be added to the Julia. So I said first you have to install Julia into your Raspberry Pi. For that you need to say sudo apt install Julia, so that Julia, actually when you are installing that Julia version, an older version of the Julia will be installed in your computer, but doesn't matter, because it is what the default repository support that's been coming up here. But if you want the recent version to be available, for that also there are some workarounds are there, but the moment you don't need to worry about that. Just you are getting that repository version, whatever is available, that you can install it into Julia. After this, what you can do is you can add this module. As I said, how we added the plot module, how we added the Gadfly module, like that you can add this module to your Julia repository by putting this add. What is this bracket here is, when you put a bracket here in the terminal, it will automatically go into this package mode. Suppose you can see here. Now let me show you the terminal which is running in Julia. This one is running in Julia. So you can see here now it has come into the mode. So you can check here these GPIO pins. They can be used to connect a specific sensor which is called Sense Hat. I think some of you might have heard about that Sense Hat also. So this is the overall. So what you can do is I just thought like I will just demonstrate to you that how do you control a simple LED using the using this GPIO pins. So here you have this. This is the source for this particular thing is here. This URL what I have given here, from this source I have taken this. The idea is that here you can here is the overall view about the pins that you are seeing it out over here. Now you can notice here on this place, there are some of the pins which are marked as 5 volt power, some of the pins that are marked as ground pins, some of the pins that are marked with a number. So through program, what you can do is, now let me show you a program. Now this is a simple Julia program through which you can control those lights, what you have, whatever that has been connected to this particular thing. You can connect this thing. to your GPIO. So for that, the first line you can notice here, we are using the PyGPIO module package. Then we are setting that pin number 4, because to that pin only we have connected here in this diagram. You can notice here for in that pin we have connected. So you can set the mode. Any pin you will be able to set to a mode. So here we are first creating an instance of the Pi. So we are creating P is equal to pi off. So we are creating an instance of Pi here. So this P is what we are going to give us our first input. Then we can notice here we are setting the mode. So we are setting the mode. Then we say P comma pin, and then we say P GPIO dot output. That means that now this pin is going to be output mode. Then we open a for loop. In order to handle the exceptions, what we have now done is we have opened a try and try loop here, so that we have now done this for loop. So we are writing this PIGPIO dot write. This pin we are turning on, and we are waiting for 0.5 delay. Then we are again setting it off. Again we are sleeping it for 0.5. So that it will be creating a blinking effect 2 times in a second, so that it will be running through this thing. The idea is not to show you how to blink a LED. The idea is that you can control the pins which are there on this board through a program. Usually people do that with the Python program, but when you are doing this with Julia, there are some advantages also. As I said, whatever the earlier speed related advantages that we get, those advantages also you will be getting it when you are going through with this kind of thing. So how did we form this thing is directly we cannot connect LED, so that we connected resistance, and then through the resistance we connected that LED, so that you will be able to do this. Suppose you want to blink the multiple LEDs also, you can connect them in series, and you can call, suppose if you are having, this will be a kind of output that you will be getting it here. So you can notice here we have got the pins that are gone back to the GPIO port, and this is the resistance that we have connected here. 2 LEDs also we can connect, so that for that we have just added up this thing. So we have set up the mode into output mode, input mode, etc. And alternatively, we want to blink it. We are able to do that thing also. This is when we are directly connecting it to this pins. But suppose you want to sense the environment, Pi can be used to sense the environment itself, like what is the temperature, what is the humidity, what is the orientation, etc. All these things you will be able to sense it with Pi. For that purpose, there is something called sense hat. So hat actually stands for hardware at the top. So sense hat, it is like a separate board what you are seeing here. Anyone has an experience of using the sense hat? Anybody has tried using the sense hat?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, so what is this sense hat is? This is like a separate board that you will be able to get it here. And this board will directly attach to this Pi like this, like all these pins. You will be able to attach this board. Now you can notice here, this is attached onto, here is the board. Here is the board. And this board is already attached to your Raspberry Pi. This is hardware at the top. You can notice this area with my mouse pointer. You can follow, and in this there are a lot of sensors are there. Here you can notice that there is a LED matrix array is there, in which you can create a display. And here there are other sensors are there. And this one, in fact, was launched into the International Space Station as part of an AstroPi mission. And if you are interested in those kind of things, you can just check the AstroPi mission in the Raspberry Pi website, where you can write code, and they are running some competitions, etc. Where you have, if you can make something meaningful, that will be launched onto the International Space Station, which will be running on the, in which the code will be running on this SenseHat also. So what are the sensors that are there in the SenseHat is that SenseHat has got a gyroscope, accelerometer, magnetometer, temperature sensor, barometric pressure and humidity. So these are all the different sensors that are available on the SenseHat itself. This device you can buy separately, and you can you can see here the SenseHat can be separately bought, and it can be connected to the connected to your Raspberry Pi. So once you have set up this SenseHat, let me show you one thing. There is a SenseHat emulator is there in the Raspberry Pi. So we again open this thing. So in the programming, if you see, there is a SenseHat emulator is there. Now you can see here. Suppose if you don't have the device, you can see here. You can see here there is a temperature, pressure, humidity things are there. Similarly, there's a orientation sensor, pitch, roll, etc. And here is a joystick. Actually, in that sensor, there is a joystick there in which you can measure for. You can move that in 4 different directions, and there is a central button also. So based on the position of the joystick, now you can adjust here. So when you are doing a emulator thing, what you can do is you can just assume that you have connected this SenseHat emulator, and then you can try to set up your things through the SenseHat emulator. But the better thing is that you have a SenseHat device. Suppose you want to try to set up the environmental sensing things. Say what is the temperature in a particular room, or what is the humidity level in a particular room. If the humidity level goes high than a particular level, you want to log that somewhere, or you want to raise an alarm, etc. This thing can be done very, very simply. So we have to just connect. In fact, the sensors are available separately also. You can get a humidity sensor, you can get a temperature sensor separately, but SenseHat is like an all-in-one kind of device, which I find very interesting. So people who are working on the sensor and other fields, it's better that you can just get a device and then try to see and experiment with it, various different things that you will be able to do. And again, this SenseHat also can be controlled using Julia. Julia has support for SenseHat also. So you can see here. Now where is our yeah. So what you do is there is something called this SenseHat.jl. Every Julia library will be coming with a JL extension. So what does the JL extension says is that there's a Julia library extension. So SenseHat library can also be added to your repository. So you can just add this SenseHat packaged into your Raspbian first. Here what we are doing is we are adding the SenseHat package into our Raspbian. First we have to add the SenseHat package into our Raspbian. Then we can add SenseHat.jl into the Julia library with the package.add syntax. We can say pkg.add using that we will be able to do it. So we can check here SenseHat.jl sudo apt-get update that we are doing here and install SenseHat. This is for adding the Raspbian to the into the Raspbian. So here this is the LED matrix. So now a minute. Now what I have done here is you can see here the first line of the code that says that using SenseHat. Color types is a Julia library for setting out various different colors. Julia has in fact a very interesting set of colors. Like people, if you are working in particularly fields such as simulation, etc., Julia has colors that are oriented towards particular domains, etc. Suppose if you are working in chemistry, there are chemistry related color array spectrum is there in Julia, where you will be able to get a real-time kind of a coloring effect. What is there with those kind of fields. For that you need to just add color types.jl. Anyhow, so here what we are now doing is we are calling the LED matrix of LED matrix. Then in the LED matrix we are just printing the Julia logo. What is the Julia logo? Julia logo is something that you saw there in the starting of the Julia in the terminal, the Julia which got showed in the ASCII art. so that you can able to print. But if you want to print anything, you can just give a show message and then you will be able to print that thing onto the LED array here. And here, this LED is what we have got through the LED matrix. Into the sense hat, you had an LED matrix, and that LED matrix is what we are calling it out here. And then this LED matrix, we have created an object for the LED matrix. And after that, what we have now done is we have just call this sense hat.julia logo. So Julia logo will be printing it out here. Suppose you want to read the joystick. You want to read what position of the joystick is there. You can simply call the read stick function. So if you say read stick, through the read stick, you will be able to see whether the left key is pressed or right key is pressed, whether it has moved on to the left side, right side, or the center button is pressed, something like that. You will be able to find it out through the read stick parameter. So we are just creating an asynchronous loop, and then we are calling it out through this thing, and whatever this read stick reads, it will be put out onto the variable, this variable C here. And you can also map it to the keyboard thing also. Like you can see here, this one is like the left arrow, right arrow, up arrow, down arrow, and then the enter key can be mapped to the center thing also. So the different sensors, whatever the sensors are there, they can be measured using humidity, temperature, pressure, these functions. You can directly call this function humidity of. Now the humidity sensor will measure the humidity of that humidity at that particular level, and you will be getting the humidity. And that humidity, now you can put it onto the LED matrix. Just to call the LED matrix function and show this thing onto the LED. Similarly, you want to put what is the temperature, what is the pressure, all these things you will be able to map it through this sense hat. And sense hat is something that will be very, very suitable for the sensor related task in the Julia. Suppose, for example, if you want to connect to say you want to control 2-3 lights, fan, etc., something like that, where you want to connect to the main power supplies, etc., right? So that you cannot directly connect the main 220 volt power supply to these pins, then it will burn out, right? So there what you do is you can also there is also something called Pi relay board. So that Pi relay board you can connect, and in that Pi relay board you can see that relays will be there, and using that relays they can be used to turn on, turn off, and to that relay you can send the signals from here. So I think already you had a session on Raspberry Pi, so you might be already having an idea that so this is going, there is no limitation on what kind of projects that we will be able to do with the Raspberry Pi, because Raspberry Pi, as we say, you can interface with anything else. And not only interfacing, now you can also see here, even if you don't want to do any of the sensor thing itself, you can check here. This itself is like a full-fledged computer. Now this is not running in this computer. This is running in the that terminal through which I have connected my Raspberry Pi device. You can see here it has got support for all these different things are there. You have got this Python environment which is by default available. You can notice here. You got this Python 3.5.3. So you can directly start doing this. And one thing that I observed very interesting in the Raspberry Pi is that it comes with something called this Scratch. If you have people, if you want to teach programming to school children, etc., this Scratch seems to be kind of very, very interesting. Where what you can do is we can just add on and build up our code with the different kind of actions one after another in a kind of Lego kind of a way, like how we connect one element with the other element, etc., so that you will be able to build the application or whatever that you wanted to create with the help of this Scratch itself. And also you can see that it comes with a full-fledged LibreOffice toolkit. So you can literally use this for your purpose as a computer. Only thing is you need to have a monitor and keyboard. And in fact, now the recent version, it comes with the keyboard itself directly. You might have seen the Raspberry Pi site. There are multiple variations in the Raspberry Pi. So you can notice here it comes with the default Office package itself. LibreOffice 5 is available here. And here you can notice the CPU load has been shown here. So now your full-fledged editor is available. So that means that Raspberry Pi is, I will say, it's very wonderful thing. In fact, we needed to introduce this in all the undergraduate curriculums, etc., so that the students get, like, whenever we want to raise enthusiasm in programming, we have to show something in action. No? So like you need to show something that that kindles the interest in the students. That is what Python has actually done, so that now they are able to do it directly rather than when they are studying C, etc. They are not, and you can also use the browsers and other things. I wanted to show you one more thing. Suppose you can also connect a camera to this Raspberry Pi. You know, here is the camera port, and through this camera port you can connect the Raspberry Pi camera sensor. Suppose if you are capturing the data through this camera sensor and you want to classify what objects that you are capturing. So for that purpose, in Julia, what we have is like we have in Julia something called this Metalhead as one of the packages. This Metalhead package is a Machine Vision package. So here what I'm doing is a simple 2-3 line code that we are going to write to see sound. Let's assume that you have installed the Julia into the Raspberry Pi, and you have connected a camera module here, and you are capturing that a picture through that camera module. Or there is something called RASP Snap, so that you will be able to capture the signal or capture the camera input. Suppose if you are capturing and storing that into a file, or you want to directly view it from the viewport, etc. Now we are assuming that you have captured that. So we are importing this Metalhead. So after that, we are calling this classify. We're calling this classify here, and then we are calling this VGG9. You know that VGG9 is a transfer learning model. You know that already pre-trained model. You can use other things also like ResNet, etc. So as we are going to deal with the images, I'm calling this image IO. Image IO is for dealing with the image input output, and image magic for image various different coder decoders with the images. We are having this image magic. Now here I'm loading this image load lap1.jpg. So this is the image which is there in my folder. Now let's assume that in your Raspberry Pi module you already captured that image and you're storing it into a file. So for RASP-SNP you can put an you can use the -o as one of the parameter, so that it will be stored onto a file. So then you just load this, and here you call the classify. Now here we are classifying this, and it is getting classified as notebook or notebook computer, whatever is there. Now if you get super excited, will this work for everything? That's a question mark, right? Because Machine Vision is still a field which has been coming up, and there is a lot of thing that has been coming up in this field, and many different deep learning models are been built with the built to detect the objects, etc. But what I'm trying to tell is, now you have got one complete stack that you are having. You are having a device, you are having a camera module, you are having a programming language which is very fast, and in that programming language you have got support for machine learning. And through that machine learning, what you can do is you can do this thing like image labeling or image detection or capture, etc. This can be used for multiple tasks, isn't it? Here we have done something like the classification. But if you wanted to say if somebody has entered into your room, etc., those things also can be identified. Say we in our lab, me and my scholars, we are working in a field called accessibility computing, where we work on using the information technology to assist the persons with disabilities. Now the kind of possibilities that the Raspberry Pi provides in terms of accessibility, I can see that it can do wonders. Even say, for example, if a person with visual impairment, where is the door if he has to identify? Where is the window if he has to identify? like from which direction the light is coming. So these things are kind of taken for granted kind of task for us. But for persons who are already suffering that kind of, I don't even want to say suffering, persons who are experiencing a disability, so for them it will be like a real big advantage if they get something like this. But of course, when you are building a real-time project, there will be obviously some sort of challenges. So you are building everything into the Raspberry Pi. How will you power that Raspberry Pi? You have to connect a separate battery module, and then how will you make that into a single-fledged unit, etc. So there are plenty of things are there. But as a board, if you go with something like Arduino, etc., where it's a simple microcontroller, but here you got a full-fledged computer, and that comes with the support for support with a full-fledged operating system, that to a Linux flavor operating system. So we can really do so many things with this. In fact, I had another worksheet on the data frames. So I don't want to completely go through that thing now. I'll just show you what Julia can do with this data frames. So you might have heard about this pandas in the Julia, sorry, in Python, where you can handle the tabular data. Similarly, here in Julia, we have got this data frames. When you use this data frames in Julia has got like lots of features where you want to access the tabular data very effectively. In fact, I have written some 6-7 articles on Julia in Open Source for You magazine over a period of time, maybe around 4 or 5 years. I will share those articles also. If you are interested, you can ping me so that you can go through those articles also. So here you can see, I think I have got my articles on Julia. So this was a bit older ones. So there you can see, here is an article on Julia introduction. This is the article that I showed you in the beginning. So then we have got how to do machine learning in Julia. If you are interested in doing machine learning in Julia, as you can see, there are plenty of things that you can do with the Julia. Julia has also got the scikit-learn.jl, and you've got TensorFlow also. There is a TensorFlow.jl, and you've got MXNet, another thing. So all these things can be used to run your machine learning, make your machine learning projects in Julia. Similarly, this one particular article on Gadfly, which is a production quality visualization package that I said, can be used to build wonderful visualization with the Julia, which is one of the important points with a lot of analytics based projects. So I will share these articles so that you can also go through it. What is special with the data frames here is that though it has got though in other programming languages also you have these data frames, the inherent power of Julia, like how it can handle a large amount of data without any delay, that is where is the underlying thread in all the different packages that are there in Julia. See here, for example, if you have Julia data frames, even you can perform various different type of joins that you can do in your databases. In other languages also they provide the join facilities, but here you can see that all the various different kinds of joins, like inner join, left join, right join, outer join, semi join, anti join, like lot of different joins are there. All these things you will be able to make it out over here. So I strongly encourage you to explore Julia and then go through Julia as one of the choices for your practical applications. I'm not, as I again told in the beginning, that I'm not telling you to throw away Python and then start using Julia for everything else. But if you, for some of the tasks, you will certainly find Julia very, very interesting. There is in fact something called Julia Academy. So where there are a lot of small courses that are available which are run by the Julia Masters. So there are, you can learn about Julia. If you want to learn about introduction, this will be very much nice course that I will recommend. If you wanted to go with the data science, then you can register for this type of courses. Dr. Uda Nazar is a very interesting speaker who explains about the data science in this course, and you've got this computational modeling in Julia particular applications, particularly applications to COVID-19 pandemic itself. From Edelman himself, they are providing this course. All these courses are free. You can register for this course. If you are interested in the machine learning, you can register for this course. So Julia Academy is a very interesting place where you can further go and explore the Julia courses. I'm just sharing this Julia Academy link so that you can go through this Julia Academy courses, etc. So overall, what I have told you is that I first explained you what is Julia, what is the primary objective. Then we talked about what are the advantages. Then we talk about how to get started with the Julia. Then we saw the language constructs, the basics of the Julia programming language. Then we explained about how do we go with Raspberry Pi and how do we install Julia onto the Raspberry Pi. Then we talked about how we can control the sensors through the sensehat.jl package. So you will be able to measure various different sensor inputs, etc., through the SenseHat library. So then we saw about how can you use machine learning in Julia to classify the image which you are sensing through a camera sensor. So here in our example, we took that image is already there since I didn't had a camera at this point in time. So I didn't connected the camera sensor. So otherwise you can just assume that that is one pipeline where you are capturing the image through a sensor and you are storing it, and that image you are able to classify with the help of the Metalhead library, which is a very interesting package with the Julia. In fact, there is another article on Julia which is about Flux. Flux is a recent machine learning library in Julia where you can do a lot of deep learning and other stuffs. And since it is fully mathematical, the gradient computation, automatic differentiation, etc., all these things works very well in Julia. So seriously, I encourage all of you to do some projects on Julia, and then it will certainly add an USP to your resume also. If you are a student particularly, or if you are a research scholar, will say that when you say your implementation platform is slightly different from the usual way, it obviously adds an advantage. Simply for the purpose of spice, we are not adding. There is a reason also why we are adding this particular thing. So this is what I thought of. Telling you with respect to Julia. So now, if you have any questions, you can ask me now.
Sir, there is one question. If you see the chat box.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So can you elaborate this question? What is meant by portable to Arduino? Arduino is simply a microcontroller, right?
Can the participant be unmute or can elaborate on it?
Arduino is not a standalone unit, right? You are going to have it as a microcontroller, and through that you are going to read it, right? You can elaborate your question also by unmuting and speaking, so that I will exactly getting like what you are actually asking for.
And there is another question also, like can we do programming for blockchain using
Yeah,
Julia?
blockchain, yes, blockchain you can certainly do in Julia, because what is blockchain obviously at the end of the day is primarily it is number crunching. So when you are doing number crunching, so Julia is certainly more suitable programming language for blockchain also. See, there are plenty of cases and case studies that are there on which when you wanted to go with the say for example, if you want to go with the blockchain, suppose if you are doing say supposedly, for example, if you are going to work with some sort of a crunching, etc., there is a crypto.jl packages are there. Similarly, there are some chain.jl, something like that is there, so that you can use all those packages that you will be able to use it. Actually, I thought of telling you that source itself, so that you yourself can find out. There is something called Julia Observer, so you can go to this Julia Observer.
Sir, any Raspberry Pi board it will work?
Yeah, it will work. But with a caveat, I will tell that I tried it in Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 4. So let us just check. Let's just show you that Julia packages repository. So here are the packages that are available for you. And this Julia Observer will be even more good. I don't know why this is not up now. Your clock is ahead. Oh. Okay, so there seems to be some sort of settings issue. Anyhow, you can check this URL in your computer. It will be working. Varsha has asked a question. Is it needed to have Raspbian OS? Is it to be added on or Pi? Raspbian OS is to be installed on that in the SD card, right? So that SD card that you are going to put it onto the slot, so that you are going to install. In fact, you will be knowing that new on the board computer this thing where you can take a package manager and you can directly install it onto that board itself. I can just slightly rotate this display and try to show you. I think. Are you able to see my setup here? What I have tried to configure here. Is that Pi visible to you now? Are you able to see that? So you can see here, this is what I have done now. So I have connected this to my monitor, and this one we have connected it through the terminal, and this is what we tried to access. By the way, I want to know, anybody here have already used Julia in your projects?
No, sir.
Okay. How many of you hearing this for the first time, the name of the programming language Julia?
Yes, sir. It is very first time, sir.
Very first time. Okay. By the way, I wanted to say that thing that I'm not marketing for Julia. Okay. So Julia is an open source programming language, because last time around we had a session in NIT Puducherry. So where at one point in time they thought like, okay, we are promoting the Julia in a commercial way. Julia is not a commercial product. It's absolutely free. You can download it absolutely free. In fact, there is a site called Julia Berry. So you can go there. You can see here, this is the Julia Berry for the Raspberry Pi, and there is one popular demo by here. You can see here they have explained you about the Raspberry Pi in one of the older version. So Julia Berry support is also there. So you can go through this URL and you can find out. But regarding the direct projects that are available, yeah, I'll just post it here. See, though I have talked about the power of Julia, everything, etc. Obviously, you may ask a question that is there nothing as a disadvantage with the Julia? You have said like this is going to be like an ultimate programming language. Obviously, it is not. Every programming language will be having its own advantage as well as the disadvantages also. So what is the disadvantage? In fact, if you want to call it a lacuna, what is that thing is? Julia is not as popular as Python now. So in Python, whenever you wanted to do something, there is lot of community support is available, so that you can get the community support very quickly. But the community support for Julia is only now growing up, so we will still have to wait for some more time for that community support to pick up. But as a data science researcher, I see that there is a lot of scope for diversified development. Whenever a field has to grow, there should be kind of diversity, right? So you should not go on. Already people who are building on projects in Python, they have this problem of like implementation, where for a prototyping level, it's excellent. But when you are implementing on a real time for a longer duration, particularly if you ask the industry people, they say that there is some sort of they say that reorienting your project for the production. So there the problems arises because of the slowness of the Python. So in such cases, wherever you wanted to enrich it, in those places you can use the Julia. Again, I say it is not Julia versus Python. This is Julia along with Python. Any other questions you have?
Any good books on any reference books?
Yeah. So there is a book for Julia. In fact, there is an open source book for Julia, which is called Julia for Data Science, which is now recently come up. In fact, here is a book. So if you are full-fledged into mathematical computing, there is this book called Statistics with Julia, which you can do with the Julia. But also I will say that there is this Julia for Data Science book is also there, which I find it very interesting. You can just, that's here, Julia for Data Science. Yes. This is the open access book actually. So this is one thing that I will say, that this book is available as a PDF also. It's a wonderful resource from where you can learn data science completely using Julia. So it's one of the up-to-date book. I will just share this URL. And this book you can directly refer from here, or this book is available as a PDF. And still, if you wanted to get this book can be purchased from Amazon also. So you can see here they cover lots of stuff. Any other questions you have?
Yeah. I guess participants, any more doubts? So like, sir, just I want to like ask, like you have explained regarding the time complexity. Like, is there anything specific research or any comparison with respect to space?
Space is something that nowadays people are not worried much, right?
Yeah. No, is there any kind of thing like, of course, if you are going for exponential data,
yeah,
maybe that is what.
See, the idea now, no, the idea now is that obviously we are going to have the big data, right? So we are not going to worry about how much size it is going to take up, how quickly we can crunch through the data. That is what is getting explored even more. But of course, space and time are obviously related, right? So when you are having a better time complexity, you will be also having a better space requirements also. But we can explore further on that, whether is there any specific studies have been conducted on that. That's a very nice thing to explore further.
I guess like total 1 hour, around 1 hour 40 minutes of complete new knowledge for almost all the participants. I guess that was very good. And I guess like the same kind of situation will be there, might be there for the Python in 2010 maybe. Like I don't know how many people know that like Java was like created after the Python. Python was there.
No, actually,
Java.
we will. You remember that Visual Basic story, right?
Yeah.
At one point in time, Visual Basic was everything.
Yeah.
So people thought like Visual Basic is like that messenger from the heavens, that hereafter no other programming language will come. But then when Python came, in fact, Victor is telling a very important point. When Python came, it is not the computer science community who took the Python. It is the things like people from chemistry, people from statistics, people from physics and other domains. They went on ahead with the Python, and then only computer science people later, like, okay, they realized this programming language can be very heavily being used. I think the same thing will happen to Julia also.
Maybe,
So now
yeah,
this
that
is very, very new. So, but with the things, even though it came in 2012, it's almost like 10 years, but the life of a programming language, 10 years is a very short time, I will say. With the current trend that we are going through, lot of data and lot of what I will feel is there should be always an alternative. If you don't like a particular thing, there should be an alternative. So life will be beautiful when you have alternative, right? So you have Julia as a very interesting alternative. That is what one of the things that is very, very, very interesting about the Julia thing.
That's nice, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. And I think Unnikrishnan.
Yes, sir.
We just stop sharing the screen. So
Yes, sir. Fine.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for the wonderful session by you on Julia, which is a new thing. Mostly, most of the participants would have felt that it was a new thing, but still, they would have definitely got something on it. I'm very sure that the explanation done on the simplest way possible would have been very much helpful for those faculty as well as those who are doing research in data analytics and machine learning research. So
somebody, just a minute, I want to answer that question. Professor is asking about any company working on Julia. In fact, there is a case study in the Julia website. I didn't mention about that. If you go to case studies in Julia, there is a case study from Cisco, what they have presented about in the network analytics. They have adopted Julia, and they say that they have attained multiple times efficiency in terms of their performance. You can just go to Julia case studies. Just a minute. So this is the problem with the teachers. No, we can't stop speaking. So other people should not curse that person who asked the question. So you can see here. So there are plenty of case studies on Julia. This is on juliacomputing.com. There is a plenty of case studies on pharmaceutical modeling, solvency, and even AstraZeneca is working on predicting the toxicity of that AstraZeneca vaccine. Now you're all using there. They are using flux.jl. What I said, it's a machine learning library on this thing. Even in financial modeling, there is something called quantitative economics, QuantEcon, where Julia has been very heavily been used. And so here everything is a case study. So you can go there and see like what are all the companies that are working on. This is the network security case study that I was mentioning about. You can see on Cisco they have given a case study. So they say Julia brought me 7.5 times improvement in just 2 lines of code. This is not something that we are taking from a Facebook post. This is given from this technical lead at the Cisco system. What he is talking about, how the Julia, in fact, there is a medical related case studies there where they were able to improve the time so efficiently that I think that is the AstraZeneca case study, I guess. We are predicting the toxicity of this thing. You can see here how they have done this case study. I just leave the case study pages with you so that people who are interested in specific domain, and this is to show that we are not talking something out of the blue, that no one is working on something that's simply for the sake of spice. We are telling that is not the thing. So this is that the world is already picked up this language, but we in our part of the world are still in our academia. We have got this ancestor syndrome. What is this ancestor syndrome is that we never change anything. We develop a kind of sentiment with our syllabus. So this is the syllabus. Our parents studied the same syllabus. We will also study. Our grandchildren also study the same syllabus. So in computer science, the shelf life for anything is very, very less. So after the shelf life, it becomes toxic. So if you are studying something which has become outdated, there is no value that the knowledge is adding to our this thing. So anyhow, so I wanted to stop the session like this. Keep yourself updating. Be be open to see like in a diverse way. Don't just go in a crowd based manner. Say what everybody is doing, we will also do the same thing. Don't go in that way. So one of the special ingredients of becoming a good researcher is that think out of the box and then say like, okay, why not try like this? So Julia is certainly one such choice. How we started using Julia is that out of that one interest only. Simply a TED talk somewhere we heard long back. So why not to try that language? As Victor is telling, that time nobody was even knowing about that Julia. I think it was 0.3 or something like that that time Julia version. We were not even knowing that whether this language will become pickup or not. You saw that 25,000 languages have come, I said in the beginning. It is not 25,001, the first language which has become no, but unfortunately it has not become like that. Julia has certainly come a long way. I wish all of you do something useful in Julia. And I told that at 3 o'clock that 2:30 that you will take some take home points from this lecture. And I hope that you have got something to take home, and you have got something that you can apply. All the best for all your future projects, and thank you very much for the institutions for giving me this chance. Thank you very much.
So on behalf of all of us here in IITK, thanks a lot, sir. Thank you for your session. So we can close this off. Like for tomorrow, we have let us all meet at 10 a.m. tomorrow for the session by Dr. Shanti Tilaga on Sensor Data Analytics for Acquisition and Monitoring. So we will meet at sharp 10 a.m. Okay. So, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Wish you the best for your workshop. Bye.
Thank you, sir.